So along this realm, and some of these are going to overlap slightly in their application, but they still are separate in and of themselves and have their own flavor. So this next one is called the narrative apologetic.
Okay.
Now when I say narrative, I mean story.
Stories, yeah.
So the narrative apologetic. So this is the idea that stories allows us to experience something secondhand that we have not yet or never will experience. So that's why, isn't that what we talk about when we read a book and say, like, I've been sailing on the seas and I've been to other countries and I've been all these other places because of books. And, and similarly, maybe it's not books for some of you, maybe it's movies. You were Aragorn cutting down the orc army because you watched it. You're like, you're Superman defeating all the foes because you watch it. And so we get secondhand pleasure and experience of what's going on by the stories that we consume.
So what you're saying is that somebody could not know God, but because we share God's stories of the ways he has interacted with us and interacted in our lives, that they then can be encouraged by that. I remember one time going to a pipe shop in Idaho and sitting down with the guys and listening to them tell their stories. And it created an opportunity for me then to share a story about how God had provided for me when I was very, very young and just out of college. And so in that, then all of a sudden they just sat at the end, they're like, that is a really good story. And it underscored an aspect of the character of God for them in that moment. And it was the swapping of stories that created the opportunity for us to sit there and acknowledge the goodness of God.
And why is it that the experience is so important? Because it is through experience that we actually learn the best. It becomes not just a head knowledge thing, it becomes real. And Jesus understood the power of the story. Every single time, half the time when he's talking, he has some type of parable, he has some type of other story that he is using in order to be able to illustrate whatever thing he's trying to get people to understand or to perceive. Sometimes they have a question and his answer is a story. And so the idea is that people learn the best through story. And this could be a true or false story. It could be someone else's story from way far away. It could be your particular story. But basically, people, they need to experience God. And so the prayer, it's kind of similar to the prayer apologetic because they're hearing the stories of what God is doing through you in your prayers. And they're applying it to, and they're also hearing, that could be through that particular apologetic, or maybe you tell them stories from the Bible, or maybe you're telling them stories from somebody else that, or something, but through that, or they have a question for you and you tell them a story from the Bible, maybe instead of an argument. Right. And suddenly it starts to become like, oh, like they can picture it so much more because that's the human experience. And so if we understand that, and you could also use this story, and we're going to talk about it soon, in art and music and everything. It shows and displays and paints a complete picture that sometimes our arguments or our statements can't even fully do.
Right.